Wabi-Sabi baker, where imperfection is part of the art. Today I will show you how to make old world farm bread with simple ingredients, just flour, water, and salt. To start with, we need to make a levain, which is based on sourdough starter, flour, and water, and it is what will rise the bread. We make this 12 hours prior to bake day. Now to make the levain, we add 200 grams of water at room temperature into a bowl. We add a few tablespoons of sourdough starter, and make sure your sourdough starter is good and strong, and you do that by exercising it about 2 days prior to making the levain, just by adding flour and water, feeding it at least every 12 hours, okay? And we find that using rye flour produces a more powerful levain. So with 200 grams of water and the sourdough starter in the bowl, broken up, we now add 200 grams of flour. And then we simply mix this up and get it all wet and incorporated. You don't have to work it, just make sure everything's incorporated. And then we cover this with plastic film and let it rest for about 12 hours overnight. We're moving on to making the bread now, and we have the levain that's been working for 12 hours overnight. And all we do here is to take off the plastic. Now this has been maturing at room temperature overnight. And what I will add to this are 430 grams of water. I use distilled water. 770 grams of strong white bread flour. So in order to do this, what I like to do is put the water in first, and then mix this levain up and the water up, just to get that diluted. And then very unceremoniously, I simply pour in the flour, all 600 grams, and I simply mix it up until the flour is incorporated. And at this point, you can clean off the spoon. See how nicely that cleans up? Makes things nice and simple. And you can get your hand involved now to mix this up. And just move your hand quickly. The dough tends not to stick to it very much if you do move it quickly. But all I'm really doing is very, very loosely incorporating this together. Making sure that as much loose flour as I can find is incorporated into the dough. Because we now are going to rest this for about 45 minutes. And this is called autolyse. And the autolyse period of about 45 minutes roughly allows the gluten to develop somewhat, fully hydrates the dough, and it's easier to work with as we proceed. So now I will cover this with plastic and leave it for about 45 minutes. All right, now that the dough has autolysed for 3/4 of an hour, we're going to work it. We're going to knead it, and then we're going to take some additional steps that I'll get into later. But for the kneading process, it's always handy to have a scraper. We need salt because we're going to add it at this time, and then have a scraper to get the dough out of the bowl. So to do this, very simple. Remove the plastic, obviously, and we'll simply work this to get it out of the bowl. Now, one of the tricks is to wet your hand prior to getting started, and that way it won't stick to your hand. So right now, we're just going to work this. I'm going to flatten it out, and then we'll sprinkle the salt in it here. And try and get it evenly distributed. I'll just use a scraper to bring the dough together again. And so the idea is to work your hands fairly quickly. And in doing so, the dough won't stick as badly to your hands. All right. So to do work the kneading, first of all, we just get our dough free, and then you just start working it by putting the heel of your hand into the dough and pulling back. And yes, it's going to stick, and you'll see little bits of dough on your bench, but just go over those and they'll start picking them up. And just keep working it. Don't worry about the stickiness of the dough. It's just part of the character. Now the thing you'll notice I'm doing, I'm kind of twisting it around, and the whole idea is to stretch it, but also to mix it, because we have salt in there, and we want to make sure it's well mixed. Now just again, I don't have any yeast in here, but if you wanted to, if you were short on time, now would be the time to add quick rising yeast. You add about 6 grams to this recipe of quick rising yeast, and that would allow you to cut your proofing time by about a quarter. So with quick rising yeast, you can raise the bread in about an hour, whereas with this method, the old world method, you need about 3 or 4 hours for it to rise. All we do is do the kneading here, and you can see this is changing already, the character of it. But work this, and then we're going to rest it and do a few stretch and fold exercises with 25-minute rest intervals. And we'll do the stretch and fold twice. But you can see here that the nature of the dough is changing. I usually go for 15 minutes. Most recipes say 10 minutes, but it's very, very hard to over knead bread. So we're another 3 minutes, we should be good. And as I said before, using hard wheat bread dough or bread flour, you don't want to cheap on that. You know, don't use all purpose. You got to consider the time you put into this, the care and love. All right, the dough has been resting for 25 minutes, and now we're going to do what's called a stretch and fold. So I simply take the lid off of the dough that's on the bench, and I do it this way so that you don't have to wrestle with taking dough out of a bowl. It's already on the bench. So take your scraper. Of course, you want to get your hands a little moist, and just get that dough moving again. And then what you can do is put a little bit of water on your bench surface. And that'll help the dough from sticking. And then transfer your dough. And then all you do is press out your dough like that, and then just grab it, stretch it out, and fold like a letter, but halfway through. And the second one, just get it nice and wobbly over top. You can see how lovely that is to work with. And the third is work on the end. Bring it over. And the force move, stretch it out, bring it over, like that. And that's all there is to it. So you just cover it up again. All right, now we've let the dough rest for 25 minutes, and we're going to do a stretch and fold. And you can see how it's relaxed. And during that time, there is some improvement in the gluten. And to do this, I like to put a little bit of water down, and also a little bit of water on your tool, on your scraper. Then we can just move this aside and spread that water out where we're going to work. And bring the dough back. And then just spread it out a little bit. And then this is called a letter fold. So what we're doing is just stretching that out. Bring it to the center. Stretch it out. Bring it all the way through. And then from this side, grab it, pull it and stretch it to about halfway. And the other way, just stretch it out, bring it over top. And then simply put the bowl on top. This saves you from putting plastic on top, which I find gets in the way. And the dough will cling to that, making it quite a mess. This way, you're on the bench. You don't have to transfer it out of the bowl. Much easier way to proceed. So we're going to wait another 25 minutes. All right, now that the dough is resting for the final 25 minutes, we will then shape the dough and place it into these baskets to proof. And in order to prepare the baskets, I've got to take some flour and sprinkle that liberally in the baskets. Now, some people use, probably the best thing to use is rice flour, but we don't have that here. So we'll make do with standard flour. And all the flour does is help the bread or the dough release from the banneton after proving. The dough has been resting for about 25 minutes after the last stretch and fold, and we're now going to start dividing the dough into 2 equal pieces, and then we'll start shaping the dough and putting it in the baskets for proofing. I'm just cutting this in half. I've just cut the dough in half because there's enough for 2 loaves here. And then we'll proceed to shape it. Now to shape the loaves, I'm going to use the Paul Hollywood method, which you can see on his bread making videos. Just a matter of pressing out the dough. Bringing it in here. And then folding it in like a sausage roll. And then we just can lift that and place it upside down, seam up in the basket, and just pinch the seam together. Sprinkle a little bit of flour on top. And then place these in plastic bags and just let them proof for about three hours or so. So these have been proofing now for about 4 hours, and they're ready to go to be baked. So all I have to do is put it on the baking sheet like this. It's a little bit sticky. And like this. That's the beauty of having these fabric liners in the baskets. This is sticking a little more than usual, but it's all about wabi-sabi, isn't it? Now all I do is take my razor and score these loaves, and now place them in the oven. And I add steam to this. So the bread is about ready now, so let's have a look, see what we got. Well, you can see how the oven spring, which rises the bread due to the steam and hot temperature, how well that worked. So these loaves are nicely plumped up, and they'll be absolutely delicious. Well, now that these have cooled, you can just see how lovely these loaves are. The old world farm bread made with very simple ingredients. Something that you can do in your home. I very much appreciate you watching and look forward to seeing you next time.